Good morning. My name is Brad Ives. I'm Associate Vice Chancellor for Campus Enterprises at UNC Chapel Hill, and with me is Chris Haplin from Celtic Energy. We're going to talk about the UNC 3 Zeros program today. I'm going to give an overview of that program, and then Chris will talk about the process, and we're hoping at the end of that to have some time to be able to take some questions. It looks like we're up and ready to go. Great. So our 3 Zeros initiative is something that came out of a vision that our Chancellor, Carol Folt, has for our university. She wants us to be a leading living learning laboratory for energy and environmental matters, meaning that we pilot projects on campus that can be taken out across the state, across the nation, across the world to improve things. As we were working through a sustainability plan over the last year, the 3 Zeros were something that emerged as goals that we could coalesce around. So what are these goals? The 3 Zeros, those of you who work with chancellors know how this goes sometimes. I walked into a meeting and the chancellor said, we need to have 0 water, 0 waste, and 0 energy. And I thought, okay, she's my boss, we're gonna have 0 water, 0 waste, 0 energy. Now, she can't really mean 0 water and 0 energy. The 0 waste part I can figure out. So after talking a little bit more with her, I realized what she was talking about was being water neutral. And being 0 waste meant getting as close as we possibly could to 0 waste, and 0 energy really meant net zero greenhouse gas. So as you can see up on the screen right now, with water, what we're looking to do is ensuring the sustainability of our water supply. I mean, absolutely crucial thing. You have to have water to live. We're going to do that by reducing our potable water usage around campus and increasing our reclaimed water usage. 0 waste. This is something that industry has really embraced. We now have 0 waste factories. To have a 0 waste campus, we can work through that and come up with ways to reduce inbound waste and then recycle or reuse the waste we have on campus. And then finally, being net zero greenhouse gases is going to be a combination of eliminating our hydrocarbon pollution sources and then also reducing the amount of energy that we use. So, what are the what's and whys of this? Well, with water neutrality, it's really imperative to only take a sustainable amount of water out of your water system, whether you're taking it out of wells or you're collecting it in the basin. Either way, you've got to do that. And you can do that by, again, reducing the water that you use in buildings and using reclaimed water. And why? Well, in Chapel Hill, I just moved back to the area in 2008. We had a substantial drought at that time. We were also in the midst of a huge growth opportunity for the region and for our campus. We had to figure out how to reduce water to be able to allow for this growth to continue. It also saves us money. With 0 waste, I think it's fairly obvious, but we, again, at Chapel Hill had some unique issues. So first of all, you can see that what we're targeting is to get rid of half of the inbound waste. Then of that half that's left, we want to reduce that by 90% through recycling or reuse. The net of that is to have a 95% reduction from our baseline. And why? Again, we don't have a local landfill. The Orange County landfill has closed. We're hauling our waste to Durham County to a transfer station where it then gets hauled even farther. That's an enormous cost. We're also incurring a lot of cost to handle that on campus. And then finally, it's impacting our greenhouse gas footprint. On greenhouse gas neutrality, it's a net zero goal there. And why? First of all, it's climate change. I know that's something that in politics is getting harder and harder to talk about, but we at Chapel Hill take that very seriously. The second thing is, despite the wrong acronym up here, we're a signatory to the American College and University President's Commitment on Climate Change. So we've already gone out publicly and said we're going to do this. But then there are the financial benefits of lowering our fuel volatility. We use a lot of natural gas. We actually still use coal at UNC. Both of these are subject to price shocks. It makes it hard to budget. And then finally, we've got costs to worry about. So as we approach the how of this, one thing I love to go back to is the motto of the state of North Carolina, esse quam videre, to be rather than to seem. We've got to make sure that we don't just go out and make grandiose projections and claims. What we have to do is have 4 elements here. We've got to make sure that the technology is there behind what we want to pursue. We then have to make sure that this is something we can do practically, and practically means It means politically, it means mechanically. How many trucks can I have come to campus if I'm going to try and operate with biomass? Can I do that in a neighborhood near campus? Maybe I can't. The third one is that we have to make an environmental difference. This is something that I think has been lost sometimes. We chase small environmental differences at enormous cost. We've got to be able to take the dollars that we spend and put them toward the things that are really going to move the needle environmentally. And then finally, it is about cost. We've got to be able to make business sense. That's how we're going to get our trustees behind us. Those of us that are state institutions here know that we have to get the legislature behind us. We have to make sure that the appropriated dollars are still going to be there. And we have to make sure that we can go convince the legislature that what we're doing makes sense. So the financial buy-in has been a big help. And this is something that when I presented this idea to our trustees really resonated with them. If we use less water, that means we buy less water. If we're hauling less waste to the landfill, that's lower tipping fees. That means less hauling costs, less handling costs. And if we're using less energy, then we're buying less fuel. And all of these three things are very critical. So how are we doing so far? Against our baseline of the year 2000, we've reduced our total water use by 12%. And this is at a time when we've added over 7 million square feet of new building space to the university. We've also grown our population of researchers and our population of students at that time. And we've done this by reducing potable water usage 60%. If you look at the small circle in the bottom corner to the right, you can see that we've also increased reclaimed water over this time. We really weren't using any reclaimed water in the year 2000, and now it's a substantial amount of our operations on campus. Here's a graph that shows that more specifically. We teamed with the local water utility, Orange Water and Sewer, to build a system to take water out of the back end of their wastewater treatment plant, bring that back up to campus, use that for a lot of our irrigation needs and for some of our plumbing needs and a couple of our newer buildings. And it's really made a substantial difference for us. On waste so far, our per capita waste is down 12%. So you can see in the bottom two circles that we are making really big progress there. Again, we've got the challenge of having a growing campus over this time. So you can see that we're roughly flat on total waste, but we are increasing our percentage of recycling, which you can see in this chart as well. We're going to have to ramp that up. We're going to have to look at a lot of innovative things. I'll talk a little bit more in a few minutes about the specifics of where we might be going. And then on the greenhouse gas side, the key thing is that we've reduced our per square foot energy usage by 30%. This is very meaningful. Again, you can see that while we're going through this huge growth period on our campus, we've actually been able to lower the overall energy usage. We've got to attack that head on and find more ways to bring that down, because that's going to make the huge difference for us. And here's another graph showing the growth of the square footage, which are the blue bars, versus the green line, which is our energy intensity. And you can see that in the last couple of years, we've basically plateaued. And that's something that we know we're going to have to tackle. And I'm looking for Chris to give us a lot of answers on that. So I'm as interested in his comments as you are. So what's our future going to be? We're looking at a lot of different ideas right now, but in water, we realize that the number one thing that we've got to do is lower our usage in laboratories. We've got our reclaimed water system. Now it's a matter of how do we get that reclaimed water into more of the buildings. We've used it quite a bit with our grounds. We think we're getting close to as much as we can do there, but buildings are going to be the big difference. Improving our water quality. We're in the Jordan Lake Basin, so we are subject to the Jordan Lake rules, those of you who know about that. It covers nutrient management. And this is something that we will be looking at very intensively with our research side of the university. We've got major costs coming on that, and we can do a lot to improve it. Obviously, plumbing retrofits, building better new buildings, and then looking at our native plantings to reduce the amount of water that those take and become more drought resistant. On the waste side, we are just starting a pilot project to have a zero waste building. That's going to kick off here this fall. We've been, the bins in this picture are some bins that we're purchasing as part of this project. We're going to look at procurement. If we can eliminate waste coming to campus that's the best waste to get rid of. Then we don't have to take it to a landfill, we don't have to recycle it, we don't have to worry about it at all. It's just not there. Increasing composting is going to be part of what we're doing. We've been approached by a company that's looking at building an anaerobic digester for waste, organic waste in the Research Triangle area. This can be part of a solution to us. A big one that I think that all the universities in here are tackling is how do we get rid of the Amazon boxes? We are dealing with 130,000 packages coming just to our students every year on the Chapel Hill campus right now. You think about the boxes and boxes. The kids are getting the new iPod. That comes in a white box that then gets wrapped in bubble wrap and put inside a brown box. Can we work with Amazon to have package delivery where all of that comes to our campus in some sort of reusable container and we don't have the extra boxes? That's the type of thing where we can join together and work on that. And then finally, recycling on site is very interesting. Japanese companies got a new copy machine that recycles paper in the building. Things like that are going to help. Finally, greenhouse gases. We've got to do something about our coal plant. We're exploring some biogas opportunities. I look forward to hopefully next year being able to come back and tell you more about that. We're looking at solar and storage. Again, we're hoping to be able to announce a very innovative project. We see storage being very important to us. The big one, can we go 100% renewables? I think we can. And that, it may take me a few years of coming back here before I can articulate how we're going to do that, but it is something we're going to chase. And then just looking at the other traditional ways to do this. So finally, I want to ask all of you that are in the UNC system to be our partners. We face the same challenges. We are going to share with you what works on our campus. I want to hear what's working on your campuses so that we can make North Carolina a better place and that the climate will benefit. Now let me hand things over to Chris.
Morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. And being part of this amazing event, once again, wonderful job. And again, hats off to everybody, Jed, the whole team that's organized this thing. Fantastic. So we want to talk just a couple minutes about the process of taking the vision that Chancellor Folt and Brad has of trying to really change the Chapel Hill campus. So we were brought on probably in January. We've done some work with the campus already to try to support the team. I'm putting together a plan for a plan, we're calling it, right? Because there's so many things that are part of this. And I'm only going to speak to a little piece of this. We worked at the stakeholders, both inside and outside the university. A lot of help from people on Brad's team and others that we'll thank at the end, to really develop a 3 zeros plan framework. Because we knew there had to be sort of a skeleton to then eventually hang all these different things on that need to be considered when you're looking at such a marked change in direction for the campus. So we started looking at some of the basic things, review utility bills, energy services, which is basically the coal-fired plants. They sell millions and millions of dollars to energy to other tenants on the campus year in, year out. Look at the overall carbon footprint, the sustainability plan that had already been done and it is about to be updated, and other past projects to see what has been either implemented or thought about to see how we could integrate all these things into one sort of grand plan, and then recommend some strategies and action steps in highly focused areas. We wanted to get some quick hits, sort of a drumbeat, as Brad likes to call it, of news out there, especially for the students and other stakeholders like that who want to see that the university is really serious about this. And what do you do, right? I mean, after listening to Dill McKimmon and Amory and David Orr this morning, right? It's such a big issue, but what do? You don't want to have analysis paralysis, right? We have to be able to prioritize things and really start making an impact, small at the beginning, slowly building up to very large impacts after several years. So we put together some rough cost-benefit analyses on how you could attack different issues within the larger issue and put together a very, very broad timeline. And again, these are all sort of framework issues we're trying to create, working all together, knowing that we're not going to solve all the problems right away. And then we supported convening a 3 zeros plan volunteer expert advisory board, which again, if we'd had more time, I'd love to really talk more about that. We have all kinds of executives from this area and other areas together to sort of trade ideas and get issues talked about back and forth, and really bring in outsiders to view what's being done on a very transparent basis. So I'm not going to go through this, obviously. So this was sort of like the chart you saw Kurt put up the other day about different issues around energy for any campus that you talk about. So what we did is we picked the top 8. You see the ones in the red boxes with the red lettering. Picked those and started to drill down. And this is just energy, right? Looking at zero net energy over time and all the stuff that goes below that, right? Then we took one of those, just demand side, and drilled down some more within that and tried to bring up what are some of the issues like critical power loads, right? That the further we get along in society today, we realize more and more becomes truly critical. And just defining that term alone is a process, right? Every professor thinks their stuff is critical, right? So you have to try to get through all that. And again, we're not going to read any of this, and this is more than we want to talk about, but this is just an example of the immense amount of work that goes into putting something like this together that you can summarize in a couple of slides for the proper audience, like outside stakeholders and chancellors and finance folks. But there's a lot to this, and I know that we're looking forward to working together with Brad and others to try to develop this in a way that can be shared with other campuses over time, over the next few years, and really try to help everybody learn from this process so that it doesn't get repeated. And I want to thank everybody in the team, of course, Brad, Anna, who couldn't make it this week, Cindy Shea, who unfortunately, as everyone knows here, she's a great sustainability director there. She's on vacation, and lots of others who are involved in this. And that's it. And we'll, any questions? Do we see any? Wow, either we did a great job or that was horrible.
Sure, those of you who couldn't hear the question, it was, could I talk about the 100% renewable energy, and was that a policy set in stone? One of the key things I would say with the 3 zeros right now is we've been very deliberate in not setting things in stone. During the prior administration, I've only been at the university about a year and a half, but we previously had committed to being off of coal by 2020. This was something very painful for the university to have to come out and realize that we didn't have a plan to get off of coal by 2020, thus we weren't going to be off of coal by 2020. When I talk about 100% renewables, and the reason I had a question mark up on the slide is I think it's possible to get there. We're going to pursue it. I've got a loose plan in my head of how to get there, but we're not going to come out and publicly announce something like that until, if you remember my 4 points, is it technically feasible? Is it something that we can practically do? I mean, obviously the environmental benefits there, but then the last one is, how do we pay for it? I expect that coming into next year, we'll be able to talk a lot more about that in detail. But if you want to take a step back and say, okay, right now, how would I do it? I've got 2 things to address. I have a cogen plant that makes electricity and steam that runs off of coal. I've got a steam plant that runs off of natural gas. I then buy my electricity from Duke that I don't produce through cogen. So those are 3 things I've got to attack and fix. What am I going to do about coal? Well, I'm going to switch out the fuel on that and work to go 100% renewable on that fuel. With my natural gas at the Manning steam plant, I'm going to have to look at a biogas solution for that plant to switch it out. And that's a big challenge, but I think it's something that we can find a way to do. And then on the power side, that really is going to be more an issue of cost. My purchased power, right now I could go out and contract for 100% renewable power. The question is, can I afford that? Can Duke supply that to me? What do they need as far as storage on their system to be able to make sure that my nighttime electrons and my daytime electrons are renewable? So currently, it's vision. but it's vision that I don't think is totally unrealistic, and I see a path for getting there. The question is going to be when and how do we handle the cost? Other questions?
So yeah, I saw your call for collaboration, sharing, and I hear you're talking about cost. Is there a way to leverage what you're doing at UNC in Chapel Hill through Margaret Spellings to make it a system-wide effort where we all collaborate and achieve something even greater?
Yes.
Are you speaking directly to her? Are you asking for money? What are you doing with her?
I haven't met President Spellings yet. Obviously, as part of general administration, we're working with them. One thing that came out in the budget for this year is that Chapel Hill has been asked to establish something called a collaboratory that's looking at environmental issues. This has been funded with some recurring money from the legislature. Part of the language of that says that we are supposed to look at projects. That collaboratory, we're just in the process of deciphering the budget and figuring out what that's going to be like. But this, to me, is the vehicle that we use where we have funding to take our expertise on the research side, marry that to what I've been hired to do on the operational side, and then work with everyone to take that out across the state. So that's something that, we got budget for it. It's going to be on our campus. We're clearly going to be working with Miriam Tripp and others at General Administration to figure out how to best share ideas, because that's what it's all about. I mean, that's what I told our trustees in setting up the 3.0 program is this is not something just in a vacuum for our campus. What we've got to do is beta things, do pilot projects, figure out what works, figure out what doesn't work, and then share that out with other campuses. And then I think we have a duty to share that with our communities and across the state. If we can come up with better ways to do building efficiency that we test, I think we've already seen that with what's happened with LEDs for all of our campuses, that these are things that should be going out to city halls and fire stations and police stations across every town. If we can come up with something that lowers our waste through changes in procurement, that's definitely something that we'll be taking right back into state procurement and working with them to do it. If we could, get a Dell computer contract where we have less packaging around those computers and we have a better recycling program for our electronics, we'll share all that. So again, I go back to my first answer, which is yes. Gotta get one of those microphones.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think one more over there.
Over here.
That's right.
So Appalachian's a very innovative place.
I just wondered, since you have so much new construction, and we hope not to create new retrofit opportunities every time we build a new building, do you see a way to institute, campus-wide and system-wide, kind of a minimum efficiency standard, and instead of using a system like LEED, to go to a system where we can look 20, 30 years out in terms of payback and really make our buildings the ultimate in efficiency on every system, instead of, we often run into basically a process by which we gradually make our buildings less efficient during the design process.
Great question. And we were talking about this exact issue in our working group yesterday, the Finance and Regulatory Working Group, and really trying to set standards across the whole system, right? We all know that LEED is not a standard, right? It applies standards, takes ASHRAE standards and all these other standards and includes them, Energy Star and so on. So we think that there's a way that can be done, but really is going to require a lot of cooperation. And I love the term collaboratory because that is really how this really needs to happen. And a lot of the campuses here in North Carolina and others, outside the state, have got varying levels of degree of either support and commitment from their management to be able to stick with a standard that's put in place, right? And it can be very difficult, but if we all work together, it's not that hard, right? In this country, a lot of our energy standards I consider tripping hazards compared to some of the ones in other countries around the world. You know, American cars don't even meet Chinese emission standards, right, for example. That's just one. There's multitudes of them. But I think it's easily done as long as we work together. But you have to get support and some funding or alternative financing for it. I think we're probably done. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.